עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל.
Well, I'm so glad to welcome our special guest tonight. Although I feel like I'm the new kid on the block. Jaime's been here much longer than I have been. So because I don't even know them as well as many of you here, I'm going to let Listen do the honors.
Well, it is definitely my honor to welcome Jaime here to speak with us about their journey and whatever they would like to share with us. And I've had the honor of watching this one grow up from a little one dressed like a dye at Purim in a box with all sorts of little dots. I don't know how old you were, Jaime, there, probably about 8 or 9, something like that. And have had the honor of watching these CJC kids grow up into wise and beautiful adults. And so I don't have to say much more than that. I would like to welcome longtime CJC member, Jaime McConachie.
Hi, thank you. You can hear me all right? Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that really wonderful introduction. I think I was like, 7 or 8. And there was a hat that was a dye, and then a box. So I was a pair of dye because gambling and Purim. Yeah. So I have just prepared a little thing to say, and I'll go ahead and start. So like Listen said, I grew up in CJC. I learned the Aleph Bet and then Torah study in a Hebrew school, and insisted on having my bat mitzvah here, surrounded by people who I knew and loved, instead of on top of lonely Masada, even though it was amazing to visit there. And I was filled to the brim with sunshine pride when I was invited to help lead High Holy Day services in my post-B'nai Mitzvah days, explaining how important it was to have an explicitly Jewish space while growing up is like trying to explain why water is wet or how we breathe. But I left, as one does, and I ventured out into the world, heard echoes of our ancestral call of Lech Lecha. I heard go, and so I went. And after I went, I wandered. For a while, my wandering was geographical: north to Oregon, west to Japan, south to New Zealand and Australia and American Samoa, southeast to New Mexico, and up and down the Sierra Nevada slopes. You know the next part. We all lived through it one way or another. My geographic wandering skidded to a halt as COVID ripped across the world. And at that point, though, my habit was motion, and my wandering, it turned inward. I found answers to questions of dissonance that I'd been carrying around my whole life, almost without realizing. I mixed in words that nudged this dissonance into resonance: queer, non-binary, mebate, which is of the house, they, them, not she, maybe he. I wandered my way nefesh, to the breathing place, the resting place, to the soul. I don't know what my relationship with pride is yet. I feel so raw and new in my queerness, but I am queer, and I'm here, and saying that out loud, it feels like a resting breath. And it feels, to quote Binya Coates in an interview on the Judaism Unbound podcast, like sacred noise making. So there's a snippet in this week's Torah portion about second Pesach. To summarize, there's a group of people who have missed the Pesach offering because they are impure by way of contact with the corpse. And they go to Moses and Aaron and they say, this wasn't us. Why were we excluded? Like, what do we do? We didn't mean to miss the Pesach offering. Moses and Aaron are like, So they turn to God. And God was like, I hadn't actually thought of that. How about a second Pesach? If you can't make the first Pesach offering because you have become impure by way of coming in contact with a dead body, or because you were on a long journey, here's a date for a second Pesach. You will make the offering, you will eat the matzah, eat the bitter herbs, say the blessings. Great. And I bring this up because there's these three parties in this story, and if one of them hadn't spoken or acted this ancestral ritual, it would be a lot more restrictive and unforgiving. And because the people went to Moses and Aaron, and because Moses and Aaron went to God, and because God implicitly acknowledged that they hadn't thought of all of the answers, accommodations were made, and a second Pesach offering was codified into law. And I think this story shows how it's so important and fundamental to live actively. We actively question, we actively pursue answers, and actively fight for justice. We actively make some sacred noise, and we live as our truest and most just selves with integrity. And to live like this is to be so Jewish and so queer, and to be proud of that and celebrate that pride is a blessing. Baruch Hashem, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Wow. Spectacular. Jaime, I hope you've got a future in teaching and Jewish studies, because you definitely, it's in your DNA. I can feel it.
I'm working on it.
Fabulous. Thank you. So tonight is amazing. It's like a double header because we have two amazing guests. So I'm going to take the honor of introducing our second guest, and I'm just going to do this thing that with Zoom and find her on my Zoom screen. Oh, there she is, Rabbi Mychal Copeland. Okay, so I just have to say, I wasn't going to give a long introduction, but not only is she a friend, but she's an amazing person. Please forgive me, I have to say a couple of these things. Before being the rabbi of Sha'ar Zahav, she was director of Interfaith Family Bay Area. She's the co-editor of a book about LGBTQ inclusion. She was a university rabbi at UCLA and Stanford. She got a master's and a teaching credential at Harvard Divinity School. She was ordained at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical School and received the highest individual honor for Hillel professionals. I can't believe you've done all this in your short career. She was a rabbinic intern at Congregation Beth Simchat Torah in New York City, the world's largest Jewish LGBTQ community. And on top of that, she's the certified yoga instructor. So I won't say anymore. I'll let you speak for yourself, but we're so glad you're here with us tonight.
Oh, so kind. Thank you. I'm so honored to get to be with you all tonight. And Jaime, I'm still just kind of taking in your words. That was so beautiful. And so profound on so many different levels. So I'm going to pick up on a different part of our parsha, thinking about the fact that next week it's Pride March in San Francisco, and in this week's parsha, one of the most important things that happens in it is that the Israelites finally begin their march through the desert wilderness. So they're on their own march. And the order and the manner in which they walked is so important that our parsha details every move they make. First, the tribe of Judah began to set out with Nachshon at the lead, and then Issachar, then Zebulun, The tabernacle would be taken apart, more troops would begin the march, and so on. Finally, at the end of this parade of sorts was the tribe of Dan. Now, Dan is not the most well-known or beloved, even, I think, in our tradition of all of the tribes, but here, the tribe of Dan has a very special role. The text tells us, then, as the rear guard of all divisions, the division of Dan would set out troop by troop. So rear guard here in Hebrew is me'asef. They are the gatherers of the troops. Our medieval commentator Rashi is taken by this idea. He wrote that the tribe of Dan marched at the back so that if anyone from any of the other tribes lost anything, Dan would restore it to them. So me'asef l'chol hamachonot means the one who gathered in everything belonging to all the camps. But then a later commentator took it even further, suggesting that the tribe of Dan made sure that nothing or no person was left behind as the Israelites made their way through the wilderness. And this included even the Erev Rav, that group of people who left Egypt with the Israelites when they were freed. No one would be left behind. This pride, I am thankful that in so many ways, Jewish communities around the globe have taken on the mantle of the tribe of Dan, caring for those who for much of our history had been left behind. And one of the ways that deep changes occurred in the Jewish world around LGBTQI inclusion was the founding of synagogues and other institutions that dedicated themselves to creating a home for people who had none. I've had the honor of working at 2 LGBTQI shuls, as the rabbi mentioned, CBST in New York and Sha'ar Zahav here in San Francisco. And I've been in partnership with other organizations over the years like Keshet and Ga'ava, the World Congress of LGBT Jews. The first synagogue rooted in queer community was BCC, Beth Chaim Hadashim, and they actually just celebrated their 50th anniversary this year, which is really exciting. Sha'ar Zahav, where I'm the rabbi, began in 1977. It is really hard in a way for me to get my mind around the climate at that time, when 3 gay, yeshiva-educated young men in San Francisco had the chutzpah to establish a synagogue in San Francisco. They tried to advertise this new Jewish house of worship in the J Weekly. At that time, it was called the San Francisco Jewish Bulletin. Their paid advertisement was rejected. It was a time of growth and visibility for gay people, but attending such a service was still really risky. And some of our earliest congregants remind me that their name tags at that time only had their first names, and our newsletter rarely contained the last name of anyone for fear of being outed at work or to family. Services always opened and closed with everyone locked arm in arm because one of the founders thought that it was important for everyone to touch, because they couldn't do that on the street without being harassed. There was no synagogue where someone could kiss their same-sex partner on Shabbat. And in the larger world, even in San Francisco, gay people were generally considered kind of untouchable. This only worsened with the AIDS epidemic. So our community has grown and changed a lot over the years. Now a place for lesbian, gay, bi, trans, non-binary, queer, intersex people, and anyone who seeks a queer normative space. And after all these years, we still sway arm in arm every single service when we open and close. So after Beth Chaim Hadashim and CBST in New York and Sha'ar Zahav, many more LGBTQI organizations and synagogues followed. We now form a global network. The latest to join us is an organization in Brazil, and I've gotten to know the leaders a little bit. Like the tribe of Dan in our Parsha, our radically inclusive Jewish institutions gathered up those who had fallen behind. And they gathered up the Erev Rav as well, the ones who weren't Jewish themselves, but were partners, lovers, chosen family, those who were looking for a new religious community where they could bring all of themselves, their LGBTQI and spiritual selves. And of course, institutions like the ones that I've mentioned were not the only ones on the cutting edge of change. I'm reading a great book right now called Lesbian Rabbis that tells the stories of the first generation of LGBT clergy and the walls that they tore down. And outside of dedicated queer Jewish communities, CJC was one of the earliest congregations anywhere to have out queer leadership. CJC has been not just a safe and welcoming place for LGBTQI Jews and loved ones, it's been a place that celebrates queer Jews and families. That is a big difference. This community has been breaking down barriers for decades at the forefront of change. And in 2022, thankfully, at this point, it's almost assumed that progressive Jewish communities in most places are queer friendly. That is a lot of change over a few decades. It's pretty phenomenal. As for me, I came to Sha'ar Zahav after a lot of this, just 5 years ago. I try to imagine what life was like for my congregants who lived through a time when they couldn't be out, and for the many who still can't. I often feel like I was blessed by time. I was born in 1970, and that's the same time when two movements in Judaism were admitting women as rabbinical students for the first time. And by the time that I got to rabbinical school at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, my queer predecessors had torn down the walls that might have made my life a lot more difficult. I have a wife and 2 kids in the other room, and I can write about LGBT inclusion all I want without fear. When I see the J Weekly, that same paper that rejected Sha'ar Zahav's ad in 1977, now dedicate an entire issue to Pride every June, and I read the conservative movement's recent paper on non-binary ways to call people up to the Torah, and I hear a family bless their non-binary kids in reworked Hebrew in a conservative synagogue near me, I feel like we have taken on the mandate of the tribe of Dan. We are now always on the lookout for those who might be left behind: LGBTQI people, interfaith families, Jews of color, and the diversity of Jewish expression. There is still, of course, a lot of work to do. And as we witness rising attacks on LGBTQI community and anti-queer legislation, we know that our work is far from over. It's boggling to me that just this year, over 300 bills are on the table that would hurt LGBTQI community, and about 200 or more are specifically aimed at trans and non-binary people. So as our culture wars heat up on all fronts, we need to take on that mantle of Dan in our nation. We are the inheritors of that sacred role that Dan fulfilled, making sure that no one is left behind. Happy Pride. I'm so glad to have been here with you tonight.
Wow. Thank you. That was, you knocked it out of the park, the both of you. So thank you. I'm really grateful to hear what you've shared with us. And, you know, it's wonderful that Zoom allows us now to attend each other's services like this, you know, as easily. So, and it's not often that a rabbi will attend a service at another synagogue. So we are honored by your presence here tonight. And, you know, I think the presence of Jose and Julie still remains with us here. It's they left a really an indelible mark on this community. So I think it's only appropriate that we recite now, or listen will sing for us the priestly benediction that Jose wrote.
That Joe set to the melodies here. So if you are not on gallery, I invite you to go on gallery so that we can see each other. If you have your camera off and you're willing to turn it on so that we can see you, so that we can really bless each other. And unfortunately on Zoom, what we can't do is physically touch each other, but we can metaphorically touch each other. And if we were all together and it wasn't the time of COVID, when we sang this song, we would all be clumped up together with our arms around each other, because we are a nation of priests and we all have the power to bless each other. Priests, priestesses, non-binary, those all ability to blessings. So look at each other, sing the blessings. As you sing along with me, really send it out to each little box, even those whose faces we can't see. Yivarechecha Adonai Yishmarecha Ken Yehi Ratzon Ya'er Adonai Panav Elecha V'chunecha Ken Yehi Ratzon. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God bless and keep you, friends, and shine a light upon you. May the garden of the life you tend bring forth graciousness and peace. The road is long and the journey, it can be quite hard, and no one's strong enough to travel it alone. May you be a blessing and be blessed by everyone who knows you. And may you always do your best to serve with love.
Amen. I can feel the waves of peace and healing wash over us. And I want to send that energy out to those who are in need of healing.
Healing is possible, may it be so. Healing is happening, may it be so. We believe what we need most are the hearts of each other right here.
Amen. Hey, thank you, listen. Thank you, Maria, our Zoom Meister. Jamie, fabulous. And I hope to see you and hear you speak again. And Rabbi Copeland, thank you for joining us tonight.